Bizarre things found in people's backyard. A man found a dinosaur bone that was 250 million years old. A couple who bought a house in California found an anti-nuclear bunker from the 1960s. It was built during the Cold War and was 4 meters underground for radiation protection. One man found human bones while doing yard work. He took them for examination and they were determined to be bones from 1,000 years ago. A man digging came across a passageway that led to the pyramids of Egypt. He dug around 30 feet down the tunnel, and archaeologists confirmed that it was a tunnel leading to Egypt's oldest pyramid. In Iowa, a family found a mammoth femur in 2010. He kept it for 16 years until it was finally examined in 2013. Scientists determined that the bone was approximately 12,000 years old and belonged to a woolly mammoth. Photos with disturbing backstories. This photo was taken in 1986, just before NASA sent these 7 explorers into space on the Space Shuttle Challenger. However, a few seconds before takeoff, the shuttle exploded and killed the explorers. To this day, it's unknown if Princess Diana died from an accident or if someone planned it. This photo was taken in Paris just before the crash that caused her death. In 2015, this plane from TransAsia Airways crashed in Taiwan minutes after this photo was taken. The plane was carrying 58 passengers and ended up crashing into the Keelung River. The pilot said he pulled back the throttle on the wrong side and accidentally shut off the only working engine. This error resulted in 43 deaths and 15 injuries. This photo was taken in Thailand in 2004, right before an earthquake caused a tsunami that reached 100 feet high, and more than 200,000 people died. Fake beggars who got caught. A man in Colombia pretended to have a leg injury so people would give him money. He collected about $200 from people driving by, but one day the police offered to help him with medical equipment, but he refused. So they looked into it and it turns out he was lying. A beggar in China pretended to have 2 legs amputated. He moved around in this little vehicle where he crawled with his hands. But one day a man took off his pants to expose him, and it turned out he had both legs. 5 years ago, a pregnant woman from America who begged for money every day on the streets with her child was caught after someone taking a picture of her driving a Mercedes-Benz, and while she counted the money with a smile on her face. The craziest things found by airport security. In an Amsterdam airport, 200 bags of tarantulas were found. In 2015, a child was found in a suitcase that belonged to a 19-year-old girl traveling from Morocco to Spain. A couple from India were arrested at the airport for smuggling small bars of pure gold that they glued to their feet. At Shanghai airport, they opened a suitcase that contained live snakes, and in total there was 121 of them. 2 women were arrested at Liverpool airport for attempting to transport the body of a dead relative in a wheelchair. And finally, a tiger cub was found in the suitcase of a Thai woman traveling to Iran. She tried to make them think it was a stuffed animal because there were other stuffed animals in the suitcase. But in the end, the woman was arrested and the tiger was taken for special care. The most brutal military drills. South Korea's elite army has to go into freezing water that's minus 30 degrees for training. And for 9 days they have to do combat training in the snow at extreme temperatures. In North Korea, the training's also brutal. One of their daily activities is to hit a piece of wood wrapped in rope 5,000 times and hit blocks of salt with their bleeding fists to make the muscles in their hands stronger. Part of the Chinese army training consists of wooden sticks being smashed on their backs, concrete blocks bursting in their arms, plates being broke over their heads, and being hit in the head and stomach with a hammer. Finally, military members from different countries have participated in this training exercise, where they have to drink snake blood and eat live animals. This training is a survival course for them to learn how to survive in extreme conditions. Dark secrets you didn't know about SeaWorld. SeaWorld is home to orcas who were kidnapped from the ocean, but the stories they tell about their captures are way different from what actually happened. For example, one of the stories they tell is that one of the orcas, which they named Tilikum, was rescued when she was 2 years old because she was injured in the ocean. But the truth is that she was taken away from her natural habitat against her will and given to SeaWorld for exhibition. The dolphins in the park suffer from stress caused by the contact they have with humans, which prevents them from feeding, resting, and taking care of their babies. Even though this information is supported by studies done at the University of Newcastle, they continue to let the public touch them. Finally, all the animals suffer from terrible consequences from overcrowding and unnatural living conditions. For example, the whales live in spaces that would be equivalent to us living in a bathtub, which doesn't allow them to swim enough to stay healthy, and you could tell by their collapsed dorsal fins. But SeaWorld claims that it's a natural condition. Tricks that cops don't want you to know. In lots of countries, police are allowed to tell lies, if necessary, to obtain information they believe may be relevant. You have the right to record as long as you're not under arrest. You can also ask for identification, and they can't force you to erase the video without a warrant. The requests an officer makes to you aren't an order. For example, if they don't have a warrant to search your car, then it's within your rights to refuse. But it's better to let them do it if you have nothing to hide, because you'll most likely be detained until they get a warrant. The best thing to do when dealing with the police is to act calmly, because if you're nervous or have a defensive attitude, it'll keep them on their toes and the situation may become more difficult. Finally, police officers may use false evidence to try and trick you into admitting the crime. For example, they may use a fake lie detector on a suspect to try and get them to admit or not admit the crime that they are being charged with. People who got stuck in the strangest places. Jamie Bracken Murphy was a young Irish boy who got stuck in a stuffed animal vending machine. He wanted to grab one of the toys, so he went in the machine, but couldn't get out. Thankfully, it was easy for them to get him out, and he was only in there for a couple minutes. A man named Cato Larson got stuck in a toilet while trying to get his friend's phone out. He didn't just reach his hand in, he went all the way in the toilet and he couldn't get out. He couldn't find his phone either to call for help. He stayed there for an hour until he was freed by firefighters, who had to break the toilet to get him out. Finally, a woman named Rosie decided to get into a washing machine for a TikTok. But her legs got stuck, so she had to call someone for help to get her out. She tried calling her friends first, but they couldn't, so she ended up having to get help from the fire department. Dumb inventions that people actually use. The Hug Me pillow was designed for people who miss their partners. Its shape stimulates half of the upper back of a human and an arm to cuddle with. One of the sillier inventions that are actually really popular are cutters. They make cutters for avocados, strawberries, bananas, and even boiled eggs. The egg cracker has become really popular. It's a pretty simple machine. You just place the egg inside, press the device, and it cracks the shell. The toothpaste dispenser is something that lots of people didn't know they needed until it came out. You just put your toothbrush in the opening, a little bit of toothpaste comes out, and that's it. The ostrich pillow's design promises that you have a very comfortable nap. Basically, you just put your head inside the pillow, and depending on what position you're lying in, you could also put your hands inside. 5 everyday things that prove our life is a lie. Mini carrots sold in supermarkets aren't really that size. They're cut to look like that and more noticeable to the eye. Hair doesn't grow thicker if you cut it or shave it. Many people think this because the tip that's left is blunt, which makes it appear to be thicker until it's finished growing. The taste of Coca-Cola changes when it's packaged in cans. The only container that it doesn't change taste is in glass, because it's chemically inert, which means that it doesn't affect the product. The gold medals in the Olympics aren't only made of gold. They're made of pure silver that's plated in gold, so they only actually contain about 1.34% of gold, which would be equivalent to 6 grams. Finally, for the longest time, people have been using bricks for their walls because it's sturdy, but nowadays companies can make anything look like brick walls. So if it looks like this, it may not be as sturdy as you think. Animals that saved human lives. A parent named Willie saved a 2-year-old girl from choking on her food. The girl's babysitter went to the bathroom when she suddenly heard the parrot yelling, "Mommy, baby," while flapping its wings. She quickly ran to the kitchen where the girl was and saw that she had blue lips, so she began doing abdominal compressions. Thankfully, it worked and opened up her airway, saving her life thanks to the parrot. In Ethiopia, a 12-year-old girl was kidnapped by 4 men on her way to school. 3 lions appeared and scared the kidnappers away. Then they stayed with her until the police found where she was. Debbie Parkhurst, a 45-year-old from America, was saved by her golden retriever dog named Toby when she was choking on an apple that she had taken a bite out of. Toby started jumping on top of her and managed to pull out the piece of apple that was stuck in her throat. Crazy ideas that actually worked. In some parts of the world, sunlight doesn't always reach, especially in the winter. So an engineer and an architect placed a giant mirror on the side of the mountain to reflect the sunlight. Alex, too, who was a British student, needed money to pay for college. So he created a website with 1 million blank pixels, each one costing $1. On the website, companies could buy a pixel to place their logo and a link to their website. It was really successful, and in no time, Alex earned $1 million. In 2015, scientists discovered that due to the sun, a city's drinking water reservoir was evaporating and had increased levels of bromate, which is from the sun hitting the water and can cause nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, and abdominal pain. So the solution was simple. They covered the water with millions of non-toxic plastic balls, which gave shade to the water and fixed both problems. The school bus that mysteriously disappeared. In 1976 in Chowchilla, California, 26 children between the ages of 5 and 14 were on their way home on the school bus when they were kidnapped along with the driver. Frederick Newhall Woods and brothers James and Richard Schoenfeld came up with an evil plan because they didn't have much money. The school bus left at the same usual time, but on the way, a van pulled up in front of them, and inside were the 3 men with masks and guns. Once they got control of the bus, they drove for about 12 hours to a quarry 100 miles from Chowchilla. When they arrived, the kidnappers took out the hostages one by one and told them to climb down a ladder that apparently led to a buried trailer. They didn't have good ventilation, so they were suffocating. And after 16 hours, the bus driver and the older boys piled up mattresses to get to the only place out, then moved a metal lid the kidnappers had placed and dug to the surface, managing to get out from underground. When they got to the surface, the 3 men were sleeping, so it was an easy escape. And 2 weeks after the kidnapping, the 3 men were arrested. 5 animals that can live after death. Chickens can live without their heads as long as their brain stems aren't cut off, because most of their motor functions aren't controlled by the brain but by the brain stems. Salamanders have the ability to regenerate limbs and organs so they don't die. When they're old enough, they could regenerate again and again, even their brain, heart, and spinal cord. After a snake loses its head, it still has hours to live, so you better stay away from its head, because it can still inject you with its venom even after death. Flatworms can rebuild any part of its body after it's cut off. If they're cut in half, the head will rebuild the tail and vice versa, resulting in 2 flatworms. Cockroaches are resistant to radiation and are most likely to survive a nuclear attack. They can live after decapitation for a long time, but since they can't eat, they die of starvation. Chilling facts about the Titanic that you didn't know. In 1912, on April 14th at 11:40 p.m., the Titanic hit an iceberg causing damage to the ship, and after a couple hours it broke in two and sank completely. While the ship was sinking, the crew sent emergency signals that were picked up by two ships. The SS Californian, which was the closest to the Titanic, and the RMS Carpathia, which was farther away. The Carpathia was the one that came and saved the passengers who survived the sinking. But if the Californian had responded to the emergency call, it could have saved more lives or even all of them. The Titanic had the capacity for 64 lifeboats, but in the end only 20 boats were used. The actual number of people who passed away is unknown, but it's estimated that there was around 1,518 people. The names of all the passengers are also unknown. In the investigations they found out that lots of them were traveling under false names, which is why some of the tombstones have no name.